Woof woof everyone. Shawn and I want to give you a quick introduction to the upcoming DBMA camp. I don't know whether to call this the 6th or 7th one. The 6th one didn't happen because of the Wuhan virus, but we're back in action this year, and this year it's going to be in Aberdeen, North Carolina, which is on the, the western edge of Fort Bragg?
We're on the western edge of Fort Bragg, that's right. Yep.
So, everybody, my partner, Shawn O'Dowd.
Good to meet you all. Glad to see you guys. Excited to meet you guys face to face now that we can finally get back together. Long time coming.
So, Shawn's a quiet professional, so it's very hard for him to talk about himself, so I will embarrass him thoroughly by putting out there that he's a two-time recipient of the Bronze Star, Purple Heart. He's been places and done things of considerable adventure. And, he has this fine school here, and there's tremendous synergy with the work that he does with the combative school. It's not a martial arts school, it's a combative school. And with my vision for DLO, the die less often material and the concept of the unorganized militia and so forth. And given the events of this past year, with all the riots that we've seen and the looting and the burning and authorities running away and so forth, it seems logical that the theme of this year's camp is dealing with a cranky crowd of scurrilous scum. Most of us come into martial arts with a vision of 1 versus 1. And things get very different when it's a cranky crowd of scurrilous scum. Some people in the crowd are just, I like Jane Goodall, the woman famous, the scientist famous for working with chimpanzees, her term for chimpanzees, pant-hooting. And, so part of the crowd is like that. Part of the crowd will take cheap shots if they can, distract you from in front, while somebody comes up from behind and conks you with a skateboard. There's, tear gas spray, there's bear spray, there's, various electrical devices, and there are people with guns as well. And going up and down the force continuum in this context is a very, very tricky thing. And, so Shawn brings his experience with firefights, and there's civilians there on the scene and so forth. And so he's experienced these things at a particularly high level. And so that is the theme of this year's camp. So let me turn it over to Shawn a bit and see where he runs.
So I'll start off by saying howdy, y'all, because we're down here in the South now. And for those of you that are wondering, the camp is going to run from the 24th to the 26th of July, which I believe is Saturday through Monday.
Yeah, because what we discovered is when we ran it from Friday through Sunday, is not everybody could make it on Friday, and then for the rest of the time we had a disconnect between people who had been there the first day and those who hadn't.
Yeah.
And so, if you can't make it Monday, okay, you can't make it Monday, but at least everybody's on the same page for days 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think that's going to make a really good impact, and so that'll be exciting. And then on the other admin notes, we're working on some group rates for some hotels right now. We know finances may have been tough for a lot of folks over the last year specifically, and so outside of the hotel group rates, we're going to open the doors to the dojo. So if you want to just bring a sleeping bag and a pillow, you're more than welcome to stay here and sleep on the mats at night, and that'd be totally fine. So we're excited about that. And then really tying in line with the cranky crowd, over the last year, we've seen a lot of incidents happening, not just in the standing realm during protests, but people eating at a restaurant, and all of a sudden they're assaulted because they're privileged and get to eat at a restaurant or whatever it is. So with that being said, having worked with Crafty for the last couple months has really changed my perspective on things. And so for this next segment of the camp, we're going to be introducing our table manners class, which is really focused on how do I develop my situational awareness, my offense and my defense when I have no ability to do any footwork or get my hips into the game. So our table manners class is going to be some exciting stuff, and we're looking forward to working through that with you guys. And then also Crafty asked me if I could sort of talk a little bit about the introduction to the concealed handgun. both from an offensive and defensive perspective. So I guess having been in martial arts for a little bit, I understand there's sometimes a hesitancy to want to incorporate firearms into the equation. But what I found is that it's not always just me using a firearm. A lot of times it's understanding what I'm up against so that I can reference that when I need to use other tools that I am comfortable carrying. So we'll do a little bit of an introduction to how we are deploying firearms tactically, not necessarily thinking about it from a range perspective where I'm standing on a firing line and I got a paper target to shoot at that's not moving and not firing back, but more so, how do I deal with it in an environment where there's lots of people, there's lots of threats that potentially could be jumping up, and knowing that just because I have the firearm doesn't mean that now I can necessarily take a shot. I may have to fight my way to a position where I can take a shot, understanding what my target is and what's beyond my target. So we're going to discuss some of those things. And Crafty also asked me to do a little bit of a talk through on some vehicle combative stuff, not necessarily just how to counter a vehicle extraction and stay inside of the vehicle, but also in the situation we're kind of looking at, maybe I might need to be extracting somebody from a vehicle who's trying to run us over or something like that. So that Uber ride gone bad scenario is a lot of fun to kind of get through, and we'll get out in the fight car and play with that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's the fight in the car, it's the fight from the car, it's a fight against the car.
That's right, yep, absolutely.
And all of this stuff here, one of the things that's impressed me with the program here is how thoroughly it interfaces and engages with the legal issues. There's things to be thinking about in terms of how you go about things there, and so there will definitely be an engagement with the responsibilities in front of the law.
Yeah, I think the piece that we have looked at quite a bit, especially since Crafty has shown up here, is just sort of thinking about what we call the three elements of the battle, which is the spiritual, emotional battle. Then we have the physical battle, and then the legal battle. And if you lose on any one of those levels, and I'll kind of put this in soldier perspective for a minute, but there's an epidemic of what we call the 22 a day veterans that are committing suicide. Well, they're losing that emotional battle, and even though they won the fight at the time, if you get to a place emotionally where you can't continue later on down the road, you've still ultimately lost that fight. So we want to kind of look at all of those things holistically in order to prepare somebody for that violent encounter that they're going to get into. And then the last part, we're currently talking to a few folks right now, and this is something I think might be exciting for the evening time, but I'm working on getting a couple of sort of lecturers to come out and talk about some interesting topics in the evening. When we're done with training, we can go out and grab some food together and listen to some folks talk about some adrenal situations or different things that they've encountered. And we're also working on putting together an evening fire circle, as we call it. So maybe we'll all get together and get around the bonfire, share some stories, talk, get to know each other, share some camaraderie, some brotherhood, and so that's going to be a fun portion of the camp.
I want to talk up the table manners. Watching Shawn teach this material really impressed me greatly. I mean, and there's a level of understanding here. I mean, when he says, meetings, forgive me, I'm going to embarrass him again, but, it's a room where everybody in the room has killed more than one person, and it's not clear whether the meeting is going to go well or go badly. And it's a situation of very hard to read shifting alliances. And so to be able to conduct that thing and not let those little things that allow for somebody to take the initiative on you, that how to defend your reactionary gap. And as I was watching what he's doing, that reminds me of something from C-Lot, or that reminds me of something from, there was one here's like, that's the Dumont yank along the bone principle. And, I'm seeing tremendous congruence with things that I've seen in my training in Asano blend. And, recognizing the nuances and the sophistication of it, but there's all kinds of situations in the real world which can start like this, which can start like this, and so forth. And so this is material which has been developed and tested under the highest level of adrenal circumstances. And to sort of have a sense of what you're doing and how to go about it should a situation develop. You get some cranky crowd and you blah, 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 and so forth. How do you frame things? How do you set things up? And something that I've been thinking about a lot as I've studied, there's all this tremendous footage out there to study, is the concept of how do we defend our reactionary gap. If somebody is inside of our reactionary gap, by definition, our well-being is in their hands. We don't have time to react. And there's a tremendous problem presented in the civilian world, which is not presented in the military world, which is the legal issue of brandishing. If you go back up, and he's arguably not presented deadly force issues, then the accusation is that I'm brandishing. Now, I would distinguish that, there's the defensive action, essentially I'm being a porcupine is versus being a bad person intimidating somebody with the weapon. But, how much do you want to pay your lawyer to make that case? And hope that he wins. There's all, so in the table manners issue, there's all these little nuances there as to how to leave yourself set up so that somebody doesn't get the jump on you, and as well, maybe I need to get going first because it's clear that's what I need to do, and so forth. But it's really very impressive body material, and I think we'll have a good time with it. And what we neglected to mention so far is we have a room set up in back, which is pretty much like a bar. Yeah. There's the counter is padded. There's chairs, like we brought the one of the chairs and two of the seats out, but you're going to learn how to deal with face to face, where one person is at the end of the table, corner to corner, and things of that sort. So there's going to be a very much, friendly testing, shall we say. And with regard to the firearms here, talk to us about airsoft and so forth.
So one of the things that we've worked on quite a bit in the last couple months is the incorporation of airsoft weapons into our training. I know the crowd I'm talking to is not necessarily afraid of taking a whack. However, we have found that with the airsoft, we can register a hit without creating significant amounts of pain. So as we've used the airsoft training, what it's given us the ability to do is take things off of a linear engagement, which really that's what we look at doing when we go to the gun range, and be able to put folks in a room and work through problems in a sort of live environment without really violating any of the safety principles. And one of the things we found in training on the firearms range is that we get so caught up in firearm safety on the range, we neglect to look at what the actual engagement environment is going to look like. So with the airsoft guns, we use a lot of the Glock 19 police trainers, so everything functions exactly as it should with a real firearm. We're able to use the gas blowback guns in order to make sure that they are cycling correctly. They're not electric guns that are toys, but they're police trainers, if you will. Same thing with our AR-15 platforms. But it gives us the ability to think not just about the fact that somebody may have a gun or be carrying a gun, or I might have a gun in the fight, but also how am I deploying that gun. One of the things we talk about at length in the class is that there's no such thing as a gunfighter. You're either a fighter with a gun, or you're going to end up becoming the victim in the engagement. So just thinking about how do we get the weapon that we want to bring to bear into the fight. How do we turn a knife fight into a gunfight? Because before we can get the gun out, we're still in a knife fight first. So those are all things that we want to keep in context as we look at our training.
And in that context, experience is, is Bruce Lee, research your own experience, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is your own. Research your own experience. And in one of the scenarios that I was put through was there, I think there were about 6 or 8 of us, and each of us was given a different role. One was the person who was the concealed weapon carrier, and for example, set up in a store, and one guy, the clerk behind the counter, and this and that, and somebody else is like, oh, you're the idiot who runs around screaming, and and so forth. And so you're there with, my temperament is to be, aha, here I am to save the day. And I've had a few incidents in my life where I kind of was, snatching a purse back from a purse snatcher. Not all that big a deal, but my instincts run that way, and I suspect most of you on the other side of the camera lens there are similar in this regard. But in this scenario, when it's like, wait a minute, everyone's running around and screaming, or the first thing you see is two people in a fight and one pulls a gun. Well, how do you know that he's the bad guy? It says you experience this. I think it provides for deep lessons, deep reflection on just how challenging it is, so that you don't go off making a fool of yourself and then enriching your lawyer, and risking extended vacations away from your family.
I think the last part, just kind of to consider, is for you folks that are coming, the training that we're going to conduct is really going to focus on things that no one can contest, because we have all seen these things transpire over the last year. And so in the spirit of the Dog Brothers that I'm currently learning from Crafty, it's just...
He's going to be fighting at the fall gathering, by the way. He's
looking forward to that.
He's bringing...
I took it down.
Yeah, you took it down.
It's down on the other side.
One of those hard rubber pistols, he's going to be going with that against stick.
So if anybody's interested...
As well as stick. I'm working with him, so yeah.
I'm looking for somebody to train with for that one, so let me know if you're interested. And but again, going back to that, just sort of thinking about how do we prepare the tribe to defend our land, women, and children. And so I think all of the sort of scenarios that Crafty's come up with for this camp are going to be exciting, because everybody here is going to be able to probably relate directly to that's something I can imagine being in right now, whereas 2 years ago a lot of us would not have imagined that those situations would be transpiring. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind in the camp.
So you're looking at our little off-camera list here. So some of the things, the cranky crowd is scurrilous scum, which also includes hidden within it the pack of jackals, a prepared, purposeful team mingled in amongst the panhooters and the cranky crowd. We have, so we'll be doing chupacabra knife, for those scenarios. We'll be doing impact weapons. So a while ago, until it fell, we had the axe handle, representing it's not just, our nice favorite 31-inch rattan stick, but, the different ways of moving with things, the different kinds of weapons you might be running into, being used against you. The table manners material, let's see, the concealed carry material, the vehicle fighting, if you've never experienced what it is to fight inside a vehicle, it's like, oh, and then somebody shows you something like, I wish I had known that one before the exercise. There's some things where, my first time that I went through a training for fighting inside a vehicle, it's like, okay, get your shin across his thighs and your back up against the roof. And now that's a good place to fight from. It's like, when I first was exposed to jiu-jitsu in 1990 and no one else knew any, it was like, okay, when you're knocked on your ass, put your legs around the waist. And this is called the guard position. And that was a revelation. And in the 3 years that I had before the UFC with that, that is, just that awareness made a huge difference. So if you're dealing with someone who's at ground zero in terms of what the tactics and the strategy, what the positional matrix is for inside a vehicle, if you have that and they don't, that's a real good thing. And so let's see, vehicles, and also the mobility class. So you can tell us about,
Yeah, so we have the privilege of being next to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and so prior to retiring, the Special Operations Command used to spend a lot of money in what they called the POTUS initiative, which was the preservation of the task force, and they realized they spent a lot of money on training us and investing in us, and we'd go down range and we'd get shot, stabbed, blown up, whatever it is, come back and we were out of the fight because of injuries. So through that, they started a program focused. It's called the Thor program, the Tactical Human Optimization and Resiliency program. And that Thor program was really a series of strength conditioning coaches, physical therapists, nutritionists that all got on board your sort of care team to help you rehab. Well, we have the privilege of having a couple of those physical therapists who train with us here, and they're looking forward to doing some mobility work with us, things that are going to help us stay resilient and stay mobile in the fight. You know, we don't always have the luxury of getting stretched out before we get into a fight. So making that a part of our daily habits
some
and
very
routines.
good stories about things that go,
Come out of nowhere. Things tend to come out of nowhere when you're in the unaware state. So, you know, maintaining you know, good health for our body, good mobility for our body, those are things we want to do for the injury prevention piece and to keep us in the fight for a longer time. So I think you know, those mobility classes would be a good way to get us started in the mornings or close us out for the evenings. Just, you know, 3 days of fighting can take a toll, so we'll keep everybody going.
Yeah, so as always, dog brother values, friends. At the end of the day, no one should spend the night in the hospital. Everybody should leave with the IQ with which he came. You're not going to be pushed into doing more than you're comfortable with. It's like, you know, you guys, many of you have been at the camp before. It's a good time.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those who want to get a bit rowdier, well, they'll have an opportunity to do that too.
Awesome.
The adventure continues.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We're looking forward to seeing y'all.